Welcome on into Second and Short. I am Tyler Lauder, joined with the Aaron Ben.
That's me.
That's you. And we're finally done with our NFL draft grades. Just shy of a month later after the draft, we're doing, we wrap those up real quick.
Yeah, I think we were like really on the nose with that, on the ball, and we got everything written up as soon as possible, and it only took a month. People forgot that the draft even happened, and we were just finishing up. So,
well, what we're gonna do now today is we're gonna do something different, and hopefully it's become a tradition. But we're gonna talk about we are going to be previewing the 2020 NFL schedule, and we are going to be talking about 7 different games that kind of stand out to us as important games. Key moments, just something that we saw that clicked and that we think you guys should tune into, even if you're not a fan of these teams, should watch for a certain reason.
Yeah, if you're a football fan, these are games that are made for the football fans, not just for that team.
Exactly. Now, there's 2 games that didn't make it. That one is just because I'm a Panthers fan and I'm biased, and the other one is a matchup that we thought was an honorable mention. But why don't you give out your first honorable mention?
All right, so real quick, my honorable mention would be Week 16, and that is the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. This could be like after Tom Brady has moved to the NFC to the Bucs. This could be what kind of defines the division. A lot of people have the Bills as the strongest team in that division now, and it could be like last year where they played towards the end of the season, and that was kind of for the division win. And I think it'll be the same this year. Week 16, Bills Pats, winner takes the division. That's what I think.
Yeah, and a lot of people are writing off the Pats right now, but what we have to remember is that the greatest NFL or college, the greatest head coach of all time, in my opinion, Bill Belichick, is still running the Patriots. And so as long as he's there, you can't count him out.
Yeah, I think as long as Bill Belichick's there, like the Patriots will always have a fighting chance. They could start Deshaun Kaiser at quarterback, and I'd probably take him over a lot of teams.
And another game that is an honorable mention here is, and this is just because I'm a fan, is it's the Carolina Panthers hosting the Arizona Cardinals in Week 4. The only reason why I kind of highlighted this because I don't think a lot of games for Carolina have a highlight. We kind of looked at Denver versus Carolina because it's Super Bowl 50 rematch, and the teams are completely different since then.
Yeah, it feels weird calling that a rematch because of how much each team has changed. So I feel you, man.
So Carolina versus Arizona essentially is because Carolina, oh man, so sad to say. They lost Luke Kuechly this offseason due to retirement. And everybody was saying, just draft Isaiah Simmons and you'll be fine. And they decided to go against it, and they went with Derek Brown. And Arizona Cardinals, right next pick, took Isaiah Simmons. So it's obviously too early to tell in Week 4 if it was a mistake to pass up him and replace Kuechly as best as you can. But that is a matchup that will be interesting to see if who's going to have a bigger impact, versus Derek Brown, Isaiah Simmons. But let's go ahead and let's jump into these 7 most intriguing matchups of the 2020 season. There we go. I found it. That's what it is. Let's start in Week 1. In Week 1, we have the defending Super Bowl champions hosting Thursday Night Football, and they will be hosting against the Houston Texans. And what's awesome about this is that these are 2 playoff teams. Like I said, Super Bowl defending team. This is one of the 4 matchups we talked about that we thought could have opened the season. Now, I want you to go into this, and we're going to kind of slowly break this down. Last year, Chiefs were 12-4, Texans are 10-6. A lot of big, bad news for the Texans. Give me a key matchup on why this game is going to be exciting.
The Texans in the off seasons, they kind of changed up their offense a lot. They added David Johnson, who comes in. He can kind of add that, like, he's also a strong runner and can help out in the pass game if he can return to his 2015, 2016 form. They traded away DeAndre Hopkins, which we're not going to get too into that because we've talked about that already. Added Brandon Cooks added Randall Cobb. They kind of changed how their offense is going to work. I think they're going to kind of now be working a lot more with on the speed element. Will Fuller is a very speedy deep threat. He's burned the Titans like countless times over the past few years. So him and Brandon Cooks, if Brandon Cooks can stay healthy, they add kind of like a speed deep threat type of deal. Whereas DeAndre Hopkins, he wasn't very fast, but he can go up. He has great hands, could make those contested catches. And then Randall Cobb is a great like he'll probably be like the number 4 receiver here. He's getting kind of up there in age. I liked him a lot as a like number 2, 3 receiver on the Packers a few years ago. I think he's very solid, very dependable, savvy veteran. And then the Texans, they also have Kenny Stills as well from the trade from the Dolphins. They've got a very strong wide receiver core, even with trading in Andre Johnson away. I think it'll be interesting to see how they match up against the Chiefs' pass defense and their kind of defensive backs there. Because the Chiefs, if you remember 2 years ago, their defense was just putrid. They shit the bed against the Pats in the AFC Championship. And then this year, or last year, sorry, in 2019, they came back. They had the number 8th ranked passing defense by yards. So they improved a lot. And so I think it'll be interesting to see if they can keep up with the Texans' like revamped wide receiving core. So that's kind of the matchup I'm looking forward to, is the Texans wide receivers against the Chiefs defensive backs. What about you, man?
For me, it's got to be the simple one to look at, and that's just, Watson versus Mahomes, because these are two guys that are supposed to be in this whole, a couple years ago we had Breeze and Manning and Brady all kind of in the high end of their career. And I think that's kind of what people are trying to find to replace them, trying to go back, 15 years and find the next group of 3 or 4 quarterbacks. And right now, I believe in the AFC, 2 of those 3 quarterbacks are Mahomes and Watson, with Lamar Jackson potentially being the third guy, just based on his playmaking ability. So right now, this is a QB duel that we might get to see for a long time. I mean, we were always every year it was always Brady Manning 8, Brady Manning 9, Mahomes Watson. These 2 guys can create plays. They are flashy. They're showmen, and they can get the job done. Now, what's going to be interesting here is if Mahomes' crew is all healthy, because if he has Tyreek Hill healthy, he has Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming in, and he's going to be hopefully, have enough knowledge of the playbook and be able to come in on week 1 and be able to contribute. And then he still has other options like Sammy Watkins, and there's just Travis Kelce, and there's just a lot of good things in this matchup. Like, this could be a game that is very high scoring. It could be more high scoring than we had in the Super Bowl. I could see this game going up 40 points, both teams. And with Deshaun Watson, just to keep talking about what you're talking about, everybody's going to be mad that they, in that Johnson Hopkins trade, because they don't think Watson now has a capable receiver. But one thing we're missing out on here is, like, for an NFL team, this isn't fantasy football we're talking about, not dynasty football. For a football team, they have 2 guys that can take it over the top, Stills and Fuller. Then they have 2 guys that can beat you underneath in Cobb and David Johnson. So, he has options at all layers of this game to be able to potentially get an upset in week 1.
Yeah, it does kind of have a feeling of like this changing of the guard. Like all the old wide receivers or all the old quarterbacks are retiring, and now these are like the new, like elite young quarterbacks: Watson, Mahomes, and Russell Wilson that's been here for a while now. So,
and now speaking of which, let's move on to our next most intriguing matchup, and that is week 3. And it's an easy transition because we're going to talk about these old quarterbacks. We got the New Orleans Saints going up against the Green Bay Packers, with the Saints hosting. This is going to be a Sunday night football game. Both teams were 13-3 last year. These are 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And this is one of those times that, I feel like if I'm a Saints or a Packers fan, I'm really happy this game is early, because it's not going to be like play them in week 17 and then play them again in the playoffs. You can kind of, if you lose, you can kind of dust your shoulders off and just keep moving. And if you win, you can just ride momentum early in the season. So that's kind of we have one key matchup here. I'm going to let you lead into it, but it's really, there's one key matchup and it's easy, it's obvious, but you got to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, if we talked about the new guard of top tier quarterbacks, so right now, Saints Packers, it's got to be Breeze against Rodgers. I mean, a lot of people are talking about Breeze maybe in his last year of his career. Rodgers, I mean, is getting up there. They've already drafted his supposed replacement. So this is kind of like you said, 2 13-3 teams from last year, 2 top tier teams in the NFC. You got to be glad that you're playing at the beginning of the season, and I'm dying to see what these two like Hall of Fame quarterbacks can do against each other in this matchup.
Yeah, and for these guys, I mean, hopefully Breeze is going to be 100% healthy. I mean, he obviously was towards the end of the season, but like just when quarterbacks are getting up there in age, you can see nagging injuries happen, and you don't want to see that. I mean, week 3, this is a prime matchup to just kind of these two quarterbacks to go out there and show off. And what I like about both these quarterbacks is that this doesn't have to be like Mahomes and Watson is going to be all about flash, 100% all about flash. Like they're going to try and show off. Someone's going to do a no look. We're going to see Watson scramble. In this one, we're just going to see accuracy. It's just going to be like bullseye, bullseye, bullseye. It's almost like these two guys are going to be playing darts is pretty much what's going to happen here. And it's whoever can just hit that bullseye in their receiver's hands better is going to, or probably last. This game is probably going to come down to whoever has the ball in the 2-minute warning is probably going to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, there is kind of that trend of quarterbacks these days being a bit more mobile, more able to make plays with their feet. Talk about Jackson, Mahomes. No, Mahomes isn't really a runner. He's a great scrambler out of the pocket. We're talking about Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. So that's kind of the trend today. And then Rodgers and Breeze are more of like standard pocket passes, which isn't a bad thing by any means. That's just how the game has developed since then.
Now, we had a lot of games. I mean, we had a game for each week when we originally wrote this down, when you originally wrote this down. And we're going to fast track. We're going to zip past all the way to the trade deadline. We're going to go to week 9. And the next matchup here is the Green Bay Packers again. And this time, they're going to be going up against the San Francisco 49ers. This will be a Thursday night football game. This is a rematch of the NFC Championship game. And what I really like about this is that the 49ers didn't just kind of like beat up on the Packers last year one time. They kind of did it twice. And so it's not saying it was a fluke at this point. However, it is just going to be interesting to see if Aaron Rodgers can come back and just erase that. Just say it was last year, it doesn't exist, or is this 49ers team that continues to get, better and better, and this Packers team, who everybody keeps doubting and doubting, is this going to be maybe one of the biggest blowouts from two of the top teams in the NFC? Both teams are 13-3 last year.
Yeah, I mean, the Niners have kind of had the Packers number, going back even to the Colin Kaepernick days in the playoffs when he ran for like 300 yards in one game on them. The matchup I'm kind of looking forward to here in this game is if Raheem Mostert can repeat his performance. He had 220 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground against them in the NFC Championship. I think the Packers are still going to be kind of pissed off about that. I think that they're going to come out firing, and I think their defense has improved since that game. So it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of keep that going.
Yeah, and for this whole situation, the Packers are going to have to hope that defense can at least do something, because they gave up 37 points in both matchups against the 49ers last year. And that's just not a good look. And they were on the road, and they're going to be on the road again. And they only scored 28 points in those 2 games. I mean, 14 points a game isn't going to get it done when you're competing against the best teams in the NFC. What I think is going to have to happen is kind of, my matchup's the opposite way. Like, I have Aaron Jones versus the 49ers rush defense, because I think the better they can control the run game, the more time they can take off the clock and they can just hold the ball longer. Instead of just trying to rely on Rodgers 24/7, they can just ride the pine, keep the needle moving, and then hopefully wear out this defense that at the end of the game, Rodgers can step in and win the game. But if it goes bad early, Mostert is one of those guys that can continue to steamroll into the second half. And it's not just Mostert. We have Coleman who can also do a lot of damage as well. And I just think that this matchup here is going to be very key to, and it's going to be very telling. Are the Green Bay Packers for real? Was that 13-3 record legitimate, or are we seeing the end of an era for Green Bay?
Yeah, and I think part of it comes at a crucial time in the season, because that's like week 9 is kind of when teams are starting to come into form, and like we have like their identities for that season, and so I think that'll be a big primetime game, big deciding factor in that season. Who do you got next?
Next I got for you is an AFC matchup. We're gonna jump back over there, and we're gonna talk about a game that, you're a huge fan of. This has been a game that you haven't said it that many times, only like 8-9 times in all of our videos, about the Tennessee Titans against the Baltimore Ravens. And what you always say here is that the Titans did what?
Well, I believe they beat the Ravens in Baltimore by 2 scores in the divisional round of the playoffs this year. And I think the Ravens haven't forgotten that. I sure haven't forgotten it. They're gonna come out pissed off. They're gonna remember what we did to them last year, and I think they're gonna come out swinging. If their offense resembles anything like they were last year, it's gonna be a tough matchup. The Titans defense, in that playoff game last year, they won, but they gave up over 530 yards to the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, he was running all over us, and he basically did almost whatever he wanted, except that we had the takeaways of the 2 interceptions, had that fumble recovery, strip sack by Jarrell Casey. So I think the matchup I'm looking forward to here, or I'm kind of actually scared of, is the Titans defense, and if they can contain Lamar Jackson, because our pass rush was not great last year. I don't know if we've improved enough. We added Vic Beasley. I don't know if that's enough to contain Lamar Jackson. I don't know if you can kind of hope to contain Lamar Jackson. I think you just kind of you just got to prevent them from getting too much. Like, you got to get takeaways. That's kind of what they did in that game. And I think that's what they'll be looking to try to do this year.
I think the Titans, for this matchup here in your pass rush, I think what's going to be key here to almost make it more even or over the top is if they do end up signing Clowney, which is what we're still waiting to hear. And if they sign Clowney, which this might be outdated by the time you're hearing this, and Clowney could already be on the Colts for all we know.
Blech.
I just picked a team with a lot of cap space. Putting Lamar Jackson in check is one of the hardest things to do because he is just a video game character. He is the newest video game character.
He's Mike Vick from the old days of Madden.
Exactly, and I'm being very cliche in saying that, but that's what he is. It's almost like some kid is just controlling him, and if you're an NFL team, you just got to try your best to hope that he makes a mistake. For me, Lamar Jackson is going to be able to do whatever he wants as long as he has great run blocking, and as long as he's able to get outside the pocket because he has somebody that's not open, not just because he has to get out of the pocket because he's constantly under pressure. If he's under pressure constantly and he has to run too much, it's not going to lead to tons of success for the Ravens, in my opinion. I think they're more versatile when they run the ball with multiple different people and it's not just the Lamar Jackson show. Now, let's flip the script there, because this game's going to be all about running. Let's talk about Derrick Henry. Last time we saw Derrick Henry running against these Ravens, he was being Earl Thomas's wife, to Earl Thomas. He was just putting his hand in the back of his head and just kind of pushing him around, doing whatever he wanted. And Derrick Henry right now is the one of the best bruising running backs we've seen in a long time. What's going to be interesting here is that the Baltimore Ravens just drafted Patrick Queen to come in and help them with their run defense, and he is going to slot in as a starter for them. And he's the most athletic linebacker they're going to have. I know a lot of people think Judon's very athletic, and he is, but I just think Queen is going to be one of those guys that's going to be very. He's going to have to be keen and on the ball, and he's going to pay attention, and he's going to get smacked in his mouth because he's a rookie. But it's going to be his job to cut down Henry, and if he can cut the big old tree down to its legs, the Ravens could have an easy game this week. But if Henry gets going, we're going to see a repeat.
Yeah, and I think we have to. I think it'll be interesting to see if Derrick Henry can keep his 2019 form going into 2020 and keep up those big rushing numbers, especially in the second half of the season.
Now let's move forward. Let's move forward one more week. We have the Tampa Brady's.
Ooh.
I love that. It's like somebody like that whole like Tampa Brady Buccaneers. I don't know why.
It's so like bad.
It doesn't roll off the tongue. It's not super clever, but I just like it. Anyways, the Buccaneers. They're going to be hosting the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is going to be a matchup of Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes, and that's one of the big matchups. But we already did that. We already talked about quarterback versus quarterback. And these Buccaneers last year were 7-9, and that was with Jameis Winston, who could only see it like 50%. Let's talk about a different matchup. No more Mahomes. Give me a key matchup without Mahomes.
Like you said, this game is going to be billed as Tom Brady versus Pat Mahomes because that's what the media likes and that's what the people like is quarterback versus quarterback. But what I'm interested in seeing is the Chiefs' pass rush. If they can get after Tom Brady enough, I'm thinking back to, because that's how you stop Tom Brady. I'm thinking back to that 2015 AFC Championship game, Broncos, when they beat the Pats. Von Miller had about 23 sacks on Tom Brady that game alone, and that's what won them the game. That's how you beat Tom Brady, is getting pressure. So I'm kind of waiting to see if the Chiefs can do that, and if the Bucks will be able to protect Tom Brady, to be honest, because they drafted the first round pick they used on Tristan Wirfs, and you can tell that's what they're trying to do, is protect Tom Brady. So I think that's kind of the matchup I'm looking forward to see. Yeah, what are you thinking, Tyler?
I mean, I agree. I think that's the key. That is the key matchup. Now, the fun matchup, if everything's kind of going to plan, is seeing the Chiefs' red zone defense try and contain the Buccaneers' options. I mean, Godwin from the slot is going to be deadly. And then you also have Gronk and Mike Evans, who can go up and posterize any defensive back for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that right there is what I think is going to be the most fun matchup.
That just seems not fair.
It's not. It's literally not. It's like you're playing NBA jams and one person has cheat codes on. Like, we don't need that. But that's what it is. The Buccaneers red zone offense versus the Chiefs red zone defense. And this is just something that Tom Brady is very effective in. He's efficient. And so is Gronk and Mike Evans. And I know a lot of people are saying like Mike Evans is going to kind of hinder and take the back row seat because Tom Brady. But as soon as they get into that red zone, he's going to be a prime option. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of those two guys leads the NFL in red zone targets, or if they're both in the top 10. I wouldn't be surprised at all after the season's over. All right, let's move forward one more week. Now, let's get away from all these legit playoff teams, these Super Bowl contenders, these Hall of Famers, and let's talk about the future. Well, the future's now, but let's talk about, we just got done with our draft recaps. Talk about Joe Burrow against Tua Tagovailoa. This is going to be a Week 13, Dolphins hosting the Bengals in an early game. It's going to be the morning game because it's not going to be prime time. I mean, the Bengals last year were 2-14. Finns were 5-11. To our surprise that they made 5-11. But I don't even care about anything else. Let's just talk about those two and that matchup. And it's going to be the first time they're going to be playing each other if everybody's starting, which we're going to assume by week 13, even if Tua is benched at the beginning of the season, he'll be starting by 13. Lead us off there.
I mean, yeah, you have to believe Tua is going to be starting by then. And I think if he's healthy, he'll start like at the beginning of the season, in my opinion. So I think what makes this matchup even more interesting, as opposed to if it was like week 1 or 2, is this is a week 13 matchup. We're already going to know at this point if Joe Burrow is having a successful rookie season, if Tua is having a good rookie season. So this is kind of it could be like this could be a preview, like a look into the future of what the quarterback scene is going to be like in another 5, 7, 10 years. I think the Dolphins have a really good coach in Flores. I think he got a lot out of what, like, no one was expecting that team to even win like more than 1 or 2 games. So getting them to 5-11 shows kind of. I think that's due to good coaching. I think Burrow, we could see him have a lot of success with Zach Taylor there. Zach Taylor, is part of that Sean McVay coaching tree, and like everyone who's had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, obviously is a good offensive coach. It's going to be interesting, and I think like a smaller matchup inside that matchup is going to be Burrow against that Dolphins defensive backfield, because they've got some playmakers there. Yeah, they've got Good and they've got Byron Jones, and they drafted Noah Igbenegani. It's going to be a tough matchup for him, I think.
This is a rematch of week 9 from the NCAA season last year, where the LSU Tigers narrowly escaped the Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, this was a 2 versus 3 matchup last year. Joe Burrow led his team to a 46-41 win. And in this game, Burrow and Tua combined for over 800 yards passing, 7 touchdowns. They had a combined 52 completions. It was just all out, especially from two teams that are supposed to be so defensive. And they decided to go out there and just ball out. And normally I would be like, and now they get professional, receivers and everything, except for Joe Burrow had 2 of the best receivers in the nation last year, and Tua had another 2 of the best receivers in the nation last year. And I mean, that's not actually a third, because that's not even talking about Devontae Smith either. Those guys had weapons, and now they're going to have other weapons here. And I just think this could be this could be a really fun shootout for a game that is really not meaning anything more than moving up and slowly improving. Because if either of these teams are competing for the playoffs at this point, it is a surprise. It really is. Like I honestly could expect at this point both teams to be coming into this game with 4 or 5 wins already, and that's about it. And that's an okay thing.
Yeah, it's still an improvement over last year for both teams.
But I'm just saying right now, if we get I don't even care. We can get the same score, the same plays. I don't even care if we get that same game and that we had from these two guys last time they met. It is going to be a fun matchup for years to come.
Yeah, it could be. I think the term today is it'll be pretty lit. So that's that's what the kids are saying.
Yeah, boy.
That's a good descriptor there for a football game.
Yeah,
Next.
This matchup's gonna no, dude. That matchup's gonna slap, is what the kids say. I think. I don't know.
I don't know any other. It's on fleek.
Well, let's move on to our final, most intriguing matchup of the 2020 NFL season, and we're just gonna skip their first matchup. It's a divisional game, and we already talked about the 49ers, but these two teams play each other every year, and it's the San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks. 49ers are going to be hosting, and we're not going to talk about that matchup in week 8, because as fun as that is, we want to talk about the matchup in week 17, because this matchup week 17 is probably going to determine who wins the division. Is what I'm assuming every time these two teams play. I mean, we got this all around dominant 49ers team against Russell Wilson. And really, it's not so much like a bag of misfits. Like, he's slowly getting a better team around him where he's not having to create as much. So let's talk about that. Last year, Seahawks were 11-5, 49ers 13-3. Give us a key matchup here on who's going to, have to compete to win this division for them.
Oh man, yeah, this is like you said. I just want to say, like, the last year, both of the games between these teams were crazy. I agree with you. I think it's going to come down to week 17. Whoever wins the division. I think it's probably going to be like the last game of the season, and I'm really excited to see how that goes. I want to see how the Niners' new defensive line, now that they've switched at DeForest Buckner and brought in Javon Kinlaw. I want to see how they can contain, or how they match up against the Seahawks' offensive line. The Seahawks, I mean, they've consistently had below average offensive lines. Everyone always says they need to get Russell some more protection. And Russell says if that, and just runs around like a maniac in the backfield and makes plays. So I want to see if the Seahawks line is improved enough to kind of like provide some protection, because the Niners have crazy defensive line. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup to see. But that's, yeah. I mean, what are you looking at?
For me, it's actually more about this matchup for the wide receivers for the Seattle Seahawks and the defensive backs for the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle for years has kind of been just like a land of, I don't know, we had Doug Baldwin for a long time, and it was just like some other guys that catch the ball, and guys come and go, and there's really no staples of this team to really give it a lot of depth. There's no depth. That's what I'm trying to say. Of playmakers. And, right now, the Seattle Seahawks, they already have Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf was better than people were saying he was going to be as soon as he became a pro. I mean, he's as good as he was before everybody started doubting him, like out of nowhere before the draft started last year. And then he fell to the second round, and people were like, oh, see, I told you. And then he just outdid what people's expectations were, which was stupid in the beginning, because nobody should have been doubting this freak of an athlete. And, they went out, they signed Philip Dorsett. They got a nice speed guy to take the top off of these defenses. And they brought in Greg Olsen. And I think that those top 4 receiving options for them is kind of just like going to be key for these guys to, be able to give Russell Wilson enough open looks, because normally these receivers can't get open. Well, last time I checked, Greg Olsen's a pretty damn good receiving tight end when healthy. And so if he's healthy, which week 17, that's the asterisk I'm putting there. If he's healthy, this matchup is going to determine who wins. It's not going to be about, getting sacks. It's not going to be about, in my opinion, Russell Wilson creating with his legs. It's going to be, can these guys beat the press coverage? Is Richard Sherman, is Tarrant, Ward, and Mosley, are those guys going to be able to hold down? That's what I want to see, because I think for the first time in a long time, we're going to get a really fun wide receiver defensive backup matchup.
Yeah, I think that game was definitely going to be super intense, and I am super excited.
Alrighty, well, that's going to be it for us there. Short and sweet episode. And again, this is the 7 most intriguing games of 2020 in our eyes.
What games are you looking forward to? That's what we want to know. Like, this is kind of a subjective thing. Like, these are the games that we kind of had higher on the list, but I want to know like what other people are looking forward to see.
Yeah, tell us your favorite team, and in that, tell us your favorite team's favorite matchup of the 2020 season, because obviously, you know more about your team than we do, because you're a fan of your team. And if you guys like what you heard from us, give us a like. Give us a little thumbs up. It's 1 click away, right down there. Super easy. Helps us out. Click subscribe to stay tuned to more of these. Coming up after this, we are going to go through an in-depth series of these key free agent additions that everybody's been talking about, but we're going to dive deep into them and how well they're going to fit for their team and if it's a short-term or long-term fix. Again, I am Tyler Lauder. He is the Aaron Ben.
That's me.
Thank you guys, and have a good night.
Goodbye.
Bye.